Hi, this is part 2 of Appliqué, how to do Appliqué. And anyone on YouTube can find this, but I'm making it specifically for the members of the Two Rivers Quilt Guild of the Easton Area Public Library. So in this video, I am going to show you three and describe one form of applique that are all different from and easier than needle turn applique, which I described in the previous video. And again, I'm using my little heart, and this time I traced the heart onto freezer paper. I traced it onto the dull side, and I cut out hearts. And so what I do first is I pin the heart with the shiny side, the stickier side up, and I try to center it just right, and I pin it on, and I cut just about a 1/4 inch, no more. A little less doesn't hurt, but not a lot less, or you won't have anything to work with. Once I've done that, I prepare the heart to be placed on the fabric. I trim down a little bit around the point. To take it in to a bit less than a 1/4 inch. The reason you do that is because if you picture what's going to happen here, you've got two things coming into the same place, and you can get quite a hunk of fabric in here, and it makes your point have a lump inside it. The other thing I do is I snip here, not all the way down to the heart, but enough to give me some leeway when I sew the heart on, when I get this ready to sew. The third thing I do that almost no one does, but being me, if I have a curve that I think is pretty tight, this is almost a straight line curve right up to about here. I don't worry about that. But if I have a curve that I think is pretty tight, I gather it. I make small gathering stitches. This is my 50 weight thread in my number 9 applique needle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just make halfway between the paper and the edge, I make these little tiny gathering stitches, the way you would gather I guess who wears a gathered skirt? No one. But the way you would gather a ruffle, let's say. And I just pull that a little bit as I get around. So that it turns out, when I pull it around, it turns out like this. Now, why do I bother? Because I'm about to press all of this heart fabric onto the freezer paper to give me a perfectly lovely heart. And if I try to press around this without the gather, I get little points. I don't get that super rounded edge. The gather brings the fabric in evenly so that you can see that edge is so sweet. It goes right, see, and that's where I stop, so I'm going to deal with that. But it goes right around the smooth edge of the freezer paper. Now I get out my iron. So this is prepped. I've cut this, I've cut in here, and I will have gathered both sides here. and I take out my hot iron. Yes, you'll burn your fingers because you're going to stick them in the way. Just be prepared. So what I'm doing now is I'm being careful not to get the edge of my iron over the fabric onto this waxy thing, or I'm going to have to clean my iron, okay? Which happens, but there, you don't want it to. So I'm going to start with this because it's easy. It's all prepped for me. And now I'm coming down, and I come in from the edge. See if you can see this. I'm coming in from the edge. And now you can see that that is attached. It looks nice. At a point, what I do is I get to the point and I fold straight up from the point like that. You see that little tiny, let me get this out of the way. It's a little tiny triangle of fabric. Then I bring this into the point. And now I've got a point to bring this right into, and I can go around the edge. And I'm going to try to do this one without gathering. See how I do. What the heck? See, I'm afraid I'm getting too much fabric up top here. I may not get my nice curve at the end especially. So I'm just going to keep coming around, see how I do. And now I'm coming into that, yeah, not bad. Not bad, it's got a little point there. I don't think anybody's going to pay any attention to that. And now I have this slit that I made, so I can come right as close as I can into that point from this side, and as close as I can into that point from this side. And I have my heart. And I see a little thing there, but who cares? And then if you go back to the original video, it's much easier now to sew it on. You just start anywhere. And you just sew around, and you just come, even the paper helps you. And if you take a teeny nip into that freezer paper, no problem, it'll come right out. Well, now you say, what the heck? You have just sewed a piece of paper into your quilt. There's a piece of paper between your heart and the back of the fabric. Yes, there is. And so what I do, we're going to pretend that this is sewed on. I'll put a couple of pins in the edge. We're pretending this is completely sewn on now. And what I do, believe it or not, don't gasp, is I take my scissors, and right in the middle of this heart, I make a cut. And I pretend that I am making a seam inside the heart. And I cut around inside the heart. I'm feeling it with my fingers. Because this is dark on light, I can also kind of see it. And I'm going to cut all the way around, and I'm going to do quick and dirty here so I don't waste your time. And we're going to pretend that that is neatly cut around the edges of the heart. And then I pull out the freezer paper. Pull it out from the back after everything is securely sewed down. Oh, I can't because I got pins in it. But you'll see, let me just get the part out that I can. The freezer paper comes out, and I end up with seeing the back of the heart with a seam of the background and the heart around the edge. And what I like about this is that when I put my batting in, the batting goes up a little bit into the heart. Here it can't. The batting is behind the top. Here, there's nothing between the batting and the heart. And it puffs up my applique just the tiniest bit, especially if I quilt around it. And I'm very fond of that way. I don't know anybody else who does it. I don't know a video I can send you to. I learned it, heaven knows how long ago, from a very good teacher, and she doesn't have a video, so that's what I do. Now, if you're still saying, oh, yay, none of that, thank you very much, I'm going to show you some other things. This is the Lori Holt method, and it's much easier. My complaint about it is that I can't get the super sharp points that I want. But what you do is you get the lightest weight interfacing, barely there interfacing. And you draw your little paper heart, just with the paper, onto the interfacing, and then you cut the 1/4 inch around, okay? And then you sew it right sides together to your fabric. So here's this little thing. I doubt you can see the stitching. I shouldn't have done white on that pail. But it is now stitched all the way around. Then you cut a slit, just a little slit, in the interfacing, not cutting through the fabric. And you turn it right side out through that little slit. And this interfacing, because it's so light, you sew right onto your quilt. I am just not happy with turning things right side out. I have trouble getting into the curves. I have trouble getting into the point. But Lori Holt, and I'm going to give you a link to her, makes absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous applique, always using this technique. So I don't turn up my nose at it, I just don't do it. So once I get this heart all turned around, you can use kind of any tool. You can use chopsticks, you can use kids, blunt nose scissors, any kind of semi-sharp but not too sharp item you have. If you like, there's something people buy called a purple fang, T-H-A-N-G, that quilt shops sell. Yeah, that's fine. And I don't even know where I got this. Somebody gave it to me. But I will use this in the curve of the heart to pull that out. And then it has a point on it too that you can push things with, and push this down into the point of the heart. Be real careful when you do this. You don't want to go pushing through anything. And you end up with, I'll show you that much. You end up with a heart. You can see this is not my skill, but I believe that it works very well for many, many people. It is one of the preferred ways to do this. The next thing I'm going to show you is definitely, positively the easiest way. It's called raw-edge-fusible. So in this case, you want, I like a double-sided fusible. You could use a single if you, well, I'll tell you in a minute. So you cut the heart the exact size, you trace it on the paper side of a double fusible on the dull side, on the dull side of a single fusible. But here, you cut it exact. You don't leave a 1/4 inch because this is the piece that you are going to sew onto your fabric. And you're going to sew it by machine. So if it's a double-sided, you put it where you want it and you press it on, and then it won't wiggle around while you're sewing it. If it's a single-sided, you can pin it on. And also this will leave the fusible and the applique and the glue and everything inside your quilt. That will come out when you wash your quilt, if this is a quilt that you are going to wash. The issue with this is you're going to stitch around. Some people use the blanket stitch on their machine. Some people use a zigzag on their machine. Some people just do a tiny straight stitch, very short, straight stitch all the way around. The edges will slightly ravel into your stitch line. It gives a more country look, I would say, especially if it's going to go in a washing machine. If you're making a wall hanging, you know, it's fine because it's not going to go in a washing machine. If you're making a placemat or a baby's quilt, just be aware that the fabric will get a tiny ravelly look around the edge. By the way, these other things you can, they're not all turned edges then hand sewn on. You can, once this is made, machine stitch it on. The difference being this edge won't ravel, but you've gone through a lot of work to get it to that stage. On the one that I do, I don't know what I did with that. The little red guy, you can, once that's made, there it is. Once that's made and the paper's in it, and you can stitch, but you've got to get very close to the edge or you're going to be picking up paper and it's going to be hard to pull out. The last one I don't have the supplies for. It uses a plastic template and starch, spray starch, you know, regular, like people use in collars. I don't iron clothes, I only iron quilts, but you buy it in the supermarket. And you cut a plastic template, the right size, the correct size of the heart, and pretend this is a plastic template, and then you put starch. Put your starch, spray your starch into a little cup and have a little paintbrush, and you paint starch onto here and press it onto the plastic with a nice hot iron all the way around. And then you take the template out, and unlike the freezer paper, this will hold because it is starched all the way around. This is best if you're going to wash the quilt because the starch will, over the years, attract insects. They love, I forget what eats the starch, ants or something. But people have had starched quilts come out of an attic all chewed. So, but if you're going to wash it, the starch will wash right out. So those are all different ways that you can applique. And in our next video, I'm going to show you what about stems. If you have flowers, you want stems. Any reason that you want, if maybe you're doing fish in the waves and you want tiny, ripply blue of different shades going across, how do you do that and make it easier and look good in a turned. Obviously, if you're going to make it with raw edge, you just cut it out, sew it on. But otherwise, you'll want to learn that. So that's going to be the third and last applique video.